Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, powered by Braden. This is your front row seat to the stories of local leaders, both nonprofit and for-profit, who are shaping our community. Every episode brings you leadership insights, lessons from challenges, and practical strategies you can use today. And yes, we'll keep it real and have some fun along the way. If you're ready to elevate your leadership, hit subscribe and follow us on LinkedIn for updates and behind-the-scenes content. Now, let's dive in. Hey everybody, Jason Holm here. I'm excited for this show, the Elevate Powered by Braden podcast. I've got a friend in the studio with me who has awesome stories, and I've never walked away without learning something, whether it's mountaintops over shoe tops or those types of things. But I've got Mark Caswell with me, and it's kind of a core foundation of Mark just to talk. So couldn't think of anybody better to be on the show. So Mark, welcome.
Yeah, man, we go back a ways now. So it's good to be here. I feel like I'm a farm kid turned engineer turned tech kid turned church kid. So I'm like, I don't know how all this happened, but yeah, who knows? Who knows what we're talking about? I told you though, like leading into this, a core feature of Mark Caswell is liking to talk. Wow, so this could be your longest podcast yet.
Awesome. Hey, let's see if we can break a record. So let's go back to the beginning, right? So where are you from? You know, kind of walk me through where you're from, school, getting into college, that kind of stuff. But today, for original.
Well, I mentioned I was a farm kid. So I actually was a teacher's kid. So my dad was a math teacher. I went to a very, very small high school. So there were 57 kids in my class. It was not hard to name the football team. Yeah, which I did. I loved football actually. And so my dad was a math teacher. Later in life, after I was out of the house, he actually ended up going and being a house rep and a senator in Michigan, which was sort of mind-blowing for us, but he did an amazing job. But yeah, I was in a farming community, like I'd go to a friend's house and stay the night and didn't realize it was weird that we wake up at 3 a.m. to like milk the cows or, and do chores. That was just life.
And this was up in Michigan?
Michigan. Yeah, I don't know where Michigan is. Some people might know Hillsdale College. That's sort of the closest thing to civilization, sure, that we had. It was great. It's a great community, great friends, great, families. It was just a really good place to grow up. But my dad, being a math teacher, said, hey, I think there were 13 of us in physics. And he said, you should be an engineer. And we all said, what's that? And he told us. And then I think I probably wasn't 11, but it was like near double digits of that 13. We said, okay, and we went to be engineers. And of course, we've all made our way in different places today. But for me, what that meant is Rose-Hulman, Indiana. So my dad had gone to a summer training thing on Apple computers and how to use them in the classroom. And he met a professor from Rose-Hulman. And, said, hey, this seems like a pretty good school. So I came down and visited. I loved it. It was the only place I applied to.
So wait a second. So you're in Michigan. Your dad's a teacher. He helped Tina be in physics. Rose-Hulman, only place you applied to. How come you didn't even try anywhere else?
I don't know. I was 17. Yeah, right. Sure.
So you're 17, no idea where you want to go. You're like, this Indiana place seems like it could.
Well, it was good. It was, I think it was the year before, or somewhere around there where they got in the U.S. News and World Report. Okay, we're the best undergraduate engineering school in the nation.
Okay, so number one, you're like, I'm gonna go there.
Yeah. No, remember, I grew up in the middle of nowhere. I knew not. You're right. I knew I didn't want to go to Michigan.
Okay,
because my family had Michigan State season football tickets since 1947. Grandpa got back from World War II.
Okay.
He bought tickets. We had them ever since.
So you're not going to.
So Michigan was a phenomenal engineering school.
Yeah.
But no.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So anyway, after Rose-Hulman, I go. It was great. It was. You have to know you want to be an engineer.
Sure.
If you go to Rose, because if you change your mind, there's a different version of engineering. Maybe you could.
Right. Yeah, but it's all pretty much it's the fighting engineers, right?
But it's amazing education, good academic record. I was supposed to do sports, so I was on the football team for like a hot second. I destroyed my knee that summer. Well, in high school, I was a quarterback and a wide receiver.
Okay.
And we'd had some success and it was cool, and I loved the game, but I was going to Rose-Hulman. I'm like, I'm not going to be a starter.
Yeah.
I'm not good enough to I'm going to school. I learned to destroy my body. So I dropped out of that, almost to be sure. But what I did want to run track And so when I got there, I was on the track team, but I'd had that knee reconstructed that summer.
Okay.
And so I show up and I couldn't run yet because my knee was still healing. But my roommate was in track, and he just sort of came home miserable every day. Yeah, so for like 4 or 5. I mean, it was probably like, it was not smart to listen to one person in a decision. But at the end of the day, after like 4 or 5 weeks, I was like, I'm not sure I want to do that either. And so that's where I era of my life. And so so then I was an engineer, did the engineer thing.
So sports ends in college, decide not to run, knee kind of broken out. So,
Well, hold on. We did have a really mean intramural ultimate frisbee team.
oh,
I mean,
now this is,
to talk about the peak of sports performance.
now we've known each other for quite a while. I don't know that you were an ultimate for
Well, I was on Stanford's B team when I went out there. I nowhere close to the A team.
So that's Stanford's B team. Okay, sorry. Okay, so you just mentioned Stanford. So you're Roll Tolman's 4 years. Yeah, just up, get your degree.
Yep.
What comes next?
So London engineering, sort of in that path, sort of discovered I liked to teach. I didn't own a class. How did I discover that? I don't know. I took a speech class that I liked. I enjoy teaching people. So the plan, so I'm going to go back to what I said before. I knew I wanted to go to grad school. Yes, to be a professor. So, I early applied. So I applied to Stanford and I applied to U of M because they both had, at the time I wanted to do deep space rocketry. So deep space rocketry is like ion thrusters, like low impulse sort of things, as opposed to like what everybody sees on SpaceX, super high thrust for a joint heat attack. And there was 2 programs. There was University of Michigan's program and there was Stanford's program. Stanford, if you ever do like JPL, the Jet Propulsion Lab, there's a lot of stuff out there, of course. So I'm like, that sounds amazing. I will try to go to one of those 2 programs. I want to become a professor. So Michigan, ironically, because I was from Michigan, they're like, you can come here. They might have tried to charge me extra. They were like you get nothing. You get nothing to come here. We learned you're a Michigan State fan. Yeah, you're right. So it's twice the tuition. So that just wasn't feasible. I had no money. I was negative money at that point in my life. But Stanford gave me a fellowship. So I got to go to Stanford and so it was tuition, it was room and board. They can give you like a little bit of a salary. And the key thing was they gave you a research grant. Okay. So sort of carry around with you.
Oh, wow.
So that was nice for professors. Because what I later learned is a huge part of professors' job is research. I wasn't a big fan of really the professor at Stanford for the deep space rocketry program. Okay. And you're young, right? You can't like see, 5 years from now after I get my PhD, it's not like, I'll matter. Right. I'm like, I don't want to spend the next part of my years in this lab with this guy. Like, I sure like him that much. Can't remember his name. Hope he doesn't see this, but there was an amazing Professor John Heaton in the heat transfer area for mechanical engineering. And because I came with my research grant, I could transfer for him, it was a benefit. He's like, yeah, sure, Caswell's bringing money, right? Why not? Because if he got a new student that didn't have that, he'd have to go find the grant money, to research, right? And so I was lucky that I got to just transfer. So I did, and he was incredible. Like still to this day, one of the best people in my life I've ever really met. Yeah. But there was a problem. The problem was I didn't like research. So I loved to teach. That was why I wanted to be a professor. But and at Rose-Hulman, it's mostly teaching because they don't really have too much of a grad program.
Okay.
So most of your job as a professor is to be an amazing teacher, hence them probably winning all these awards, right?
Yeah.
Whereas at most universities, your job is first to be
a researcher, right?
Yeah. Right. And so I didn't like research. I'm like, man, that's a bad plan. And it was hard because I had that fellowship all the way through my PhD.
Yeah.
Like I was funded all the way through. And they gave me a little stipend to, you weren't getting rich, but I could eat. That was nice. Yeah. But after my master's, I'm like, wow, that path doesn't make sense. Cause like if I go be a engineering professor, that's almost certainly going to be my life.
Yeah. Right.
Is doing research. That's not what I want. Right.
It's interesting. So when you go out, you decide to go to Stanford, right? And you're meeting with these folks and you finally figure this out on your own.
Was there any way you could have known this before you made that decision? I mean, that the research was this versus that. I'm just curious how that.
Well, let's all remember this is significantly before ChatGPT. So you should give this Copilot this, right?
I Copilot, tell me about this. Or I mean, probably, but you got to remember my background, right?
So I'm from a farming community.
Yeah.
No one knows anything, right, about any of that, right?
Where we can ask, right?
Then I go to Rose-Hulman, and I probably could have gone and asked some professors, but I didn't know to ask, right? Because like I had seen the thing that I thought I wanted to do, and that version of the thing was what I wanted to do.
You know,
like to this day, I think that'd be an amazing job. Sure. Actually, my roommate at Stanford is back there as a professor. No, okay, now, yeah. His nickname was smartest name in the line, Dave Fisher. And he's real smart. So big shout out to Dave if he's out there. One of my favorite humans also. But yeah, I don't know. Like, yes, theoretically, could I have known it? But like, I feel like we're sort of touching on, wisdom takes time, right? So intelligence, you're born with it. Skill sets and knowledge you can learn, but wisdom takes time. Like you just have to earn it.
Yeah.
And mostly you have to earn it through time and failure.
Yeah.
Right. So that, I think you could consider that a sort of mini failure, although the consequences were not great for me. It's terrible. I had a plan, the plan didn't work.
Yeah.
I see young people coming out of college. I have this book in my head called 5 Lies. And it's lies that I've seen the next generation after me get told. And I will not be able to remember them all. They're written down if you ask me, because I haven't thought about this in a hot second. But one of those lies is you could change the world. So on the surface, you would think that's a lie because I would say, well, you can't.
Right.
And like statistically, yeah, you can't. That's a thing, right? But the reason I call it a lie is because like if you're a young person and I tell you you can change the world, you don't hear me say you can change the world. You hear me say you should change the world. Oh, and you don't actually hear me say you should. You hear me say you must. So you get, like, people say that for good reasons.
Yeah.
You tell another person that because you're like, I want you to know that your life matters.
Yeah.
Right? That's what you mean. Sure, you said that. But what the person takes away is, if I don't change the world, I'm a failure. Well,
wow.
Well, guess what? When you're like 23 or 25 or 30 or maybe even 40, you don't change the world by setting out to change the world. You change the world by first changing yourself.
Yep.
Which takes a hot second. Sure. Or messy, right? And then maybe if you change yourself, maybe you change your family and your close friends, and maybe you change your tribe, and then, sort of on and on and on. And maybe, not as the goal, but as an outcome of like really working on yourself, you change the world.
Yeah.
But it's very, very rare. Right. And to be honest, most of the people that you could think of as we have this conversation that changed the world are really bad people. Like, right. Like Mao changed the world. How's that go? Elaborate.
Yeah. That right, y'all.
And so it's like this sort of toxic thing that people get told, right? Well, like right beside that is this idea that there's an optimum path, in your life. Is there theoretically an optimum path? Like, I guess, but there's like dozens of paths that you could take through life, that are amazing and fulfilling, and where you can do good in the world, or at least for your little tribe that you find yourself to be a part of, right? And so this idea that like you're supposed to know everything up front, you're supposed to figure it all out, you're supposed to know the exact path through life, and if you don't, you're a failure.
Yeah.
Or if you don't change the world, you're a failure. It's just like stupid toxic.
Yeah.
Right? Like I luckily I don't think I was told that, or at least didn't listen. Right? If I was, still sure. But man, if you show up to the world and you're like, okay, I'm 23 years old, I just got out of college, my job is to change the world, and my job is to find the optimum path through life.
Yeah.
I bet you'll be pretty frustrated most of your life. You'll probably end up screaming at people on Facebook. Well, I guess not Facebook. I don't know, Snapchat. Something that's new, whatever new. That's foolish and dead. Yeah. But like, yeah, it's not a thing. It's like so that like, and again, I didn't know that back then. I just knew like the next step in my path was not what I wanted, so I like needed a new path.
Yep.
But honestly, sort of goes around my whole career. But that's probably like a thing I would tell people. Like, don't, like, yes, try to do good in the world. Yes, try to make wise decisions about your life. But don't go to the ultimate where you put this pressure on yourself that if you don't change the world and you don't get the ultimate path, you're somehow a failure. You're not. That's stupid.
You know, there's probably 3 or 4 clips that we're going to pull out of there of what I might call Caswell isms. And every single time we talk, you pull something out. Like I always
voice is there
out of somewhere very good. Thank you. Let's say that, Maggie. So the whole idea, you can change the world in general in your mind. You're thinking, you're telling somebody something really positive. But then the way you just took it down to a deeper level, what they're actually receiving and how they feel, is completely different.
Yep.
Right. So that poof, there's one of those things right there. It's just like I said, you always say something that I walk away with and holy cow, and we're only like 15 minutes. You're at Stanford, you finish up your master's.
Yep.
And you decide to make a decision to do something else. Where's life take?
Mistake number 2. That's what I asked. So I had done an internship at Allison Transmission in the electric drive plant, which is actually in here in Fishers where they sit, right? And loved it. It was great. I liked the people I worked with and for. The product was super cool. And so I thought, when I left that internship, they gave me a verbal offer.
Okay.
Well, speaking of wisdom and lack thereof, I was too young to know that a verbal offer didn't actually mean anything. So I end up, it's like, so I make this decision because I'm getting to my PhD. So my master's is finishing up. I'm getting to my PhD. And that's like all good procrastinators. I make it sort of at the last minute. I make this decision. I'm like, I don't know, a month out from needing a job that I thought I had. Yep. Because so I call my boss. I'm like, hey, good news. I'm ready to go. And he's like, yeah, that never got approved by HR. Okay, what does that mean? That means you don't have a job, moron.
Hey, I hate to fix, but no thanks. Yeah.
So I don't have the job. So here I'm a Stanford master's fellowship graduate, and I have no job. So I slept on my buddy's couch, and I had no money either, right? So I slept on my buddy's couch for 2 months. 2 months. I thought I wanted to teach, so I was like, well, maybe I could I know I don't want to do this long term, but like if I don't have anything, maybe I can get a job in Indianapolis public schools teaching. That's like my net. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I got accepted for a position. Who knows if I would bet any good or not, because I had to get a background check, which generally a good idea for shorters. Well, since I've been in California, I had to go through their background check process. Oh, and McKinney being the most bureaucratic state in the union, it took weeks. It was like 8 or 9 weeks or something like that to get it back. And so by the time I got that back, I had applied for it and got a position with Rolls-Royce, aerospace, jet engine, super cool. For mechanical engineers, that's sort of the big share. You're already geeking out. This is cool stuff. Yeah, and by the way, sorry for the teachers. It was like 3 times the money. Right. Now, let's remember I wasn't actually qualified to teach. I just went. But yeah, so end up not doing the teaching gig, headed over to Rolls-Royce, and it was there like a decade, actually. It was, first 5 years were really, really technical. I was doing classified work in the Department of Defense, which was a lot of like, no one's ever done this before stuff.
Yeah.
You're pushing material science, design, manufacturing to like the very edge of current capability. You're inventing things along the way. Got called patents. That was cool. My patents are like, if you go look at them, they're sort of pointless, but it's cool. The tools, right? Yeah. So I did that for 5 years, and so then my next plan was, I love this. They had this thing at Rolls-Royce called a Rolls-Royce Fellow Program. So basically you like follow some technical path for like 30, 35 years. You probably get a PhD along the way somewhere. Okay. And you become like the expert in the world at some esoteric aspect of jet engine. Yep. Sure as I am. Right. And I loved it. I was like, well, this is super. Yeah. Cool. Right. I'll do that. And so I was on that path, and I actually, in order to do that work, there's no way to say this that it doesn't sound like arrogant. Like I accidentally got a computer science master's from Purdue. So So because we were doing Department of Defense work, we had to own all the things that we were using to do the work. Rolls-Royce is British, so they had developed software in the UK. They had to give us the source code for the software because the US wanted to make sure a US entity owned the software. Yeah, right. Well, the software, we were pushing the edge. It didn't do all the things it needed to do for us, and I just sort of didn't like aspects of it. And so I read 3 C++, if I can date myself, books, cover to cover. 3,000 pages in total. Read everywhere to try to internalize it, and rewrote the software, added some additional features and stuff like that. And then I'm like, dude, you're making jet edges. If you're going to fly people around in metal tubes, don't you think you ought to know what you're doing? Yeah, right. And so I'm like, I got to take some software engineering courses. Yeah. So I went down to Purdue, grad non-degree at night, took a couple courses, loved it. Rolls-Royce paid for it. And so I'm like, well, I'll do a couple tomorrow, do a couple more. And then, before I know it, I'm halfway through another master's. I'm like, well, I might as well. Yeah, I might. It's not that big a deal. It's okay. It's Tuesday, it's Purdue. I'll get it fair. We didn't have kids yet. So that was helpful. And I did have to take a hiatus in the middle when we didn't have kids and all that. But, and then my last class, actually, this is a little further, but my last class, it was this will be ironic because I ended up in technology, right? Yeah. I was just taking courses because I was interested in the stuff. Yeah. Right. I didn't need a degree or anything, but it was well, you might as well have it go towards something. So my very last class, if I picked one course, it was networking or something. It would have been a computer science degree. If I picked another class, it would have been applied math. Okay. Now I enjoyed the math side more. I always loved math. Got a math teacher, right? Surprise. But I'm like, well, I don't ever want to be in technology, but that seems you're more broadly applicable in the world than my math degree. Yeah. So I guess I'll do that. So I did that. So I got a computer science degree. In the midst of all that, the folks at Roll started tapping me on the shoulder and do you want to go into the business side? It was that was a weird moment in my career. I had a really good mentor that made sure he sat me down and told me, this is a moment in your career. He's like, if you go to the left on the business side, if you get a couple years into that, you won't be able to come back to the technical side. Yeah, it'll be too far. Yeah, move too close. Now, if you go down the technical path, there's always an ability to come over, but if you go too far down that path and you come over to the business side, you won't have enough time to go do the things in business you might want to do, right? So it's this is a month. He's there's no wrong answer, but just know that you're sort of choosing a direction. So I ended up choosing business side, which was awesome because it ended up being highly international. So I was in Japan, I was in Sweden and Portugal, all over Europe, South America. I had customers in the Middle East, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, India actually was in. So it's sort of all over. Everywhere I went, I screwed up every cultural thing you could possibly imagine. And then later learned that I screwed up. Yeah. So I grew a lot. I'm not sure I accomplished a lot. But it was amazing. I was like, well, this is also cool. Yeah. Right. I love the business side. I love putting together deals. I love sales. I love, figuring out how to get things done as a project manager and all that.
What was when you're at that decision point? You go this way, you go technical, you go this way, you go business. You went business, right? And then, of course, your career went that way. What was the deciding factor for you? What were you thinking? You mentioned a good mentor, right? In talking about that.
I did, although he wouldn't help me pick. He just first made sure I knew I was picking.
Yep.
And then made sure I was thinking of all the things I might not know to think of. Yeah. Right? So he was sort of implanting his wisdom on me.
Yeah.
But he wasn't picking for me.
Yeah. So you had all the options. You knew what would deliver, right? But the business side, and then of course, when you go that route, you travel the world, right? And get to see all these things. And
which was great until it wasn't. Right. Turns out it's not great for kids,
Right. Not great when you're married, young married, that kind of stuff, all the kind of things. But a kid comes in, changes a little bit, changes your perspective.
But it's just, did I make that decision? Yeah, that's interesting.
Because that's a big one.
I mean, I do like change. Okay. I love learning new things. So, given 2 equal paths, if this path I know more and this path I know less, I probably lean towards this over here I don't understand, so let me go figure it out.
So literally getting out of your comfort zone makes you feel more comfortable than staying in your comfort zone.
I don't know if I would say it makes me feel more comfortable. It makes me feel more energized.
Yeah. Yeah. See that? I think that's pretty unique. I think a lot of folks tend to stay in the lane that they're in because they feel after they can, right? But sometimes there's that fear of the unknown. Doesn't seem like you have a lot of fear of the unknown. You get a little bit of excitement of what could be. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's so that is a there's some neuroscience behind that concept. I'm going to completely screw this up. I listened to a super interesting podcast. It was Peter Attia interviewing the person who was actually talking about this thing, and I can't remember his name. They just did a recap of it. It was like the beginning of 2026. And one of the things he said was so curiosity is one of the like highest levers of joy. So not happiness, happiness and pleasure. I think he actually used the term happiness. I use the term joy. Like pleasure is momentary.
Yeah.
Right. Like to use some sort of religious language, sin is pleasurable in the moment.
Yeah.
It's just a really bad idea. Right. Whereas joy might feel bad in the moment. Yeah. It's this like bigger picture, more sort of stable thing. Curiosity was one of the drivers of joy.
Interesting.
So for some people it's lower. So they, but I think I'm one of the people that like, if you can just absolutely peg my curiosity meter, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I love learning new things. I love exploring new ideas. I love like, if I completely disagree with you on something, I just like to like stare at you and figure out why. Like why is it you think of the way you do, right?
Yeah, sure.
Not to necessarily even argue back. I just think it's fascinating, sure, But yeah, I don't know. So maybe that was why. Okay, that's why I picked that way.
Interesting.
I don't think it was money. Like it was definitely a potentially more lucrative path
To go the business path.
Yeah, but I don't know. So again,
I could have chose either one. Yeah. So you go the route, go in business, you're traveling around. You mentioned a change. You guys have your first kiddo while you're traveling the globe?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right.
I have 3 now. So now they are 17, 15, and 12. Hence why my face looks like a used shoe.
I'm old, man. As you're looking at me as a father of 5 with 24, 21, 19, 15, and 14. You look at this. This is what happens to that, right? So yeah,
You're right. We do look great.
we have faces for an audio podcast. Just turns out we're on video. Oops out. Good looking dudes here, believe us. All right. So your first kid comes around, you're traveling the world, you realize that maybe that's not the best thing that you should be doing. What happens, now?
I mean, there was probably like there was a few sort of factors that came in. One, business travel is like really exciting for a bit.
Yeah.
Like it's not usually fun to go travel for, but it's not like you're like, hanging out at Cedar Point right earlier. So you're in a meeting in a different place. Like, yeah,
It's a meeting at a different place and then a hotel to, a different license.
And of course, international was cool, right? Oh, sure. Just being in a city, you experience some, even if you're not a tourist. So that was sort of cool. But there was a moment, it was one of my wife's old favorite and least favorite stories. There was a moment. So I was in Tokyo, which was a 13-hour time difference, or 11, depending on which direction you want to go. And so I'm dead asleep in the middle of the night. And at our home in Indianapolis, the basement floods. And luckily it was an unfinished basement. And so it's toys and stuff. The kids were super little. Actually, it was just Sam was... No. We had Sam and we had Kate. Kate was a baby. Sam was probably like 2 or 3. Okay. So Jen's trying to call me. I'm asleep. Yeah, sure. I don't know what phones were back there. I probably had a Kindle phone, and yeah, right, out of there, right, sure. And so she couldn't go to hold me. So like the sump pump had stopped working. She got it working again, just sort of shook it and some stuff in it. So that all the water sucks out of the basement. But you're left with like all the mess stuff. And there were a couple carpets down there. Yeah. So she spends a whole bunch more time that day, like shot backing up all this stuff. So she'd shot back, she'd fill up this, I don't know how many gallon shop back. She'd carry it upstairs. She'd dump it outside. She'd carry it back down. So she probably did that 20 times.
Oh,
That's right.
Yeah.
And she's not a big person. And that thing definitely weighed as much as her. It's just a lot of work. And Sam's got a block. Sam's riding his bike in the bayside, just water going everywhere. He's like, this is the best thing that's ever happened. Sure. So I finally wake up. I see the message from her. I call her, and she's just finished. Like, just finished.
Yep.
Taking the last thing outside, dumped it, taking it back downstairs. She just sit on the couch to finally relax. Her back hurts, like everything. And she tells me the story of like, I am so sorry. Like, you did the right thing. But I was like, why didn't you, why were you taking the shop back upstairs?
Yeah, why didn't you use?
And she's like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, the sump pump was working. Why didn't you stop at the sump pump? She's like, I'm going to murder you. Don't critique my work for about 30 hours. It says like 20 hours. There were 20 days a day upstairs. Probably the best work out of her life. I was like, and that was a bummer. I was like, okay. Yeah, like maybe this is a little more that we need to be putting on the family. Oh, it's a bias. That was right. But that's actually not the reason I ended up leaving Rolls-Royce. So I was there about, I think it was like 11 years. And, I'll just talk. You said we don't have a time limit. So yeah. So I was on this program. It was called the RB3015. We had made an engine in Indianapolis that was a smaller engine. So if you ever ride on like a Republic Airways, little jet, yeah, like those types of smaller engines. It was called the AE product line. Yeah, all the way down from Allison engine, which was same as Allison transmission, which was the General Motors company that they sold to Rolls-Royce, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, so it's a small engine. Well, the weird thing about small engine, like the engine on your lawnmower, if you had to push the lawnmower down, the engine on that lawnmower, it goes out of lots of different things. Yep. It's a lawnmower engine. It's a snowblower engine. You do audio and who knew yet, right? Well, it's sort of the same with this. This engine could go on lost. Like, contrast that with the big engine. So you get on a 777, right? There's a Trent 1000 strapped to and they made that engine for what a black aircraft, right? And there's no variation of it. So it was like a weird design sort of thing. Well, it's probably I almost got fired a handful of times. It's the closest I keep to getting fired there. And it opened my eyes to a thing. So we were designing this engine. We had like 17 different customer applications. I think it was 9 customers interested in the engine. And we're designing this thing for like 40 years. So what types you see in the future and all this sort of stuff. And we had this process where you would go through this gated process. It was a good process. It would align to the FAA's process. You can show up in a room. You'd say, here's where I'm at. Here's all the things I thought about. They would say, yep, we agree, or no, go check this out. Yep. So we go into the room, and one of the problems was like, I didn't have a fixed set of requirements that they could evaluate me against. Well, there's not a fixed set of requirements. It's a cloud of requirements for 17 different applications, some of which will happen and some of which won't. Right? Okay. So we sort of have that conversation, and everybody's like, yeah, we understand. Like, you got to do this sort of thing. So I leave, I come back. They're like, well, you don't have a fixed set of requirements. Like, I'm not going to have a fixed rec yet. And we do this like 3 or 5 times. Yeah. So the 4th or maybe the 5th time I come in, I think we're beyond the statute of limitations on us. I come in and I say the same thing again. I'm like, guys, like, who invented this process? Mm-hmm. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, who wrote this process down, right? We're like, well, we did. I was like, okay, we made the process. We can change the process. There's not a single person in this room that actually thinks this is the right process or felt. I was like, I tell you what, I'm going to go out. I pass myself. If it's not written in the Constitution or it's not written in the Bible, that means we made it up and I ain't doing it. How I did not get fired, I have no idea. My boss called me into his office later and he's like, so anyway, well, you know what? I never had to go back in that room, and we kept moving forward. We were kicking butt, right? But that experience there, and then as I went around the globe trying to get customers lined up and everything, I met a lot of like the executives, and they were all amazing people, all smart, almost all ex-engineers, all super smart, all cared, all trying to do the right thing, right? And I had this realization that only about half of them like actually knew how to run a business. Not because they weren't smart and didn't care, like they did, right? So they just never like a skill set. Yeah, think about it, inside a giant enterprise level organization as an engineer, even a business oriented, and like you just never get a chance, though, right? Until it's too late. Yeah, right. And so I sort of look at that. I'm like, I don't think I'm any smarter than them. I don't think I'm going to get any different experiences than them. And based on that, I have a 50-50 shot of being a living example of the Peter principle. Like, I got to go learn how to run a business somewhere. And it ain't going to be here. Yeah, right? And that was hard because I loved it there. I still love it there. Like, great product, great people, doing some really cool work, like, across the world, right? I'm like, I got to go learn how to, like, if I'm at that job, and I want to have all these people depending on me knowing what I'm doing, I can't just show up and hope. It's no deal, right? So I'm like, all right, so I got to go work with small businesses. So sort of in parallel to that, I found this opportunity at a business called KSM Consulting. 18 people, It was a subsidiary of Katz Sacker-Miller, the accounting firm, great reputation. It's a super entrepreneurial founder, Charlie Brandt. And I'm like, that is perfect. It's like a small business. I'm going to see it all. I never worked for somebody as entrepreneurial. And oh, by the way, I'm a consultant. Like, I'm going to go work with all these other businesses too. Like, that's perfect. I'll go do that for a couple of years and then I'll come back. Which, of course, I did not say in the interview process. But you go back. Hey, by the way, I'm going to use you for a couple of years experience. And then I'm out. Right. You're right. Didn't you? This is about me. But here's the problem is I fell in love with it. Like, I just absolutely adored consulting. My curiosity being like, sure, the origin stories of these business, like I'm sure you get to do this on your podcast. So like, it's just so cool.
It is cool.
Like, how in the world do people end up starting these random businesses? And like, how did it work? How did it not work? Anyway, sorry, I digress. So it was great. I loved it. So then I stuck in there. And so then I'm like, all right, I'll do this now. So I'm on, I don't know, what am I on, like number 4? So career, something like that at that point. And then I think we were getting it right. We were starting to grow. Our founder, Charlie, who has since passed away from this, but he ended up getting cancer. And he had moved me into the president role, like wanting to step back a little bit anyway. But when he got cancer, he's like, we need to sell the business. Like, Mark, I need you to step in as CEO. I don't know how this is going to turn out for me. It was a very surreal moment because I had no aspirations to, I don't know what I would say. Like, I never expected that I would be a CEO. I don't know. I don't even know if I like really knew what that meant. I thought it was cool that I'd kept the thing as president. And I'm no farm kid. So when I got the title as president, I'm like, well, I guess I better buy some better clothes and talk smarter.
There you go.
Which didn't work at all. So I stopped that after a month. But he brings me to his office. He gives us this news. He's like, we're going to sell the business. He's like, your first meeting is in 12 days. I'm not going to be there because I'm not going with the business. And oh, by the way, Mark, like, I'm not sure how this health thing's going to turn out. So like, please take care of my family in this whole thing. Right? It's like, oh, like, like, okay, like, holy crap. Hey, like, there was so much emotion. So there was emotion for Charlie and his family, that deep responsibility. And like, I'd love that guy. Like, he'd done so much for me and my family already. A great person, like, admit his family there, like, so there's like a responsibility thing there. Then there's this, like, wow, I just got to be a CEO. Like, that seems cool, right? Right. Great. And I think it was 37 or 38 at the time. So it was like fairly early. So that seemed cool. Then there was this part of me that said, wait, this thing that I love, we're going to sell, potentially to private equity, which I knew nothing about, but I hadn't heard good things.
Right.
And, so my reaction was actual anger. Like, so I got told I was going to be CEO. And I was angry for 2 weeks. I was angry because I wanted to screw the thing up.
Yeah, sure.
Like, we built this thing that I thought was amazing and thought meant something to the world. And us, I'll screw it up.
Our own at that point. You gained the 50 people when you first came in. I think we were like 80-ish people. Great growth.
I mean, that was 39% CAGR for 13 years straight.
Okay.
And then we did an 85% year. Then we were like 10 and 10 or something, which sort of evened it back out again.
Awesome.
There's a lot of luck in there, right? But I think we were doing it right. I think we were doing what the world was asking us to do correctly. So,
So he tells you 12 days your first meeting. I'm not going to be there. Your first meeting's with the PE firm that's coming.
The one that ended up buying us.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the first day. No idea what I was doing.
So you show up at that.
I hadn't even seen a P&L. Yeah, he gave me the CEO gig.
So you're now running the company, NZ to P&L, don't know any of those things. You walk into that first meeting. How was that? What was that like?
Well, I would say I survived on my passion. So I really did things. So our mission was to help our clients, coworkers, and communities thrive.
Okay.
And we meant that like super deeply. Like that word thrive was a very human word. Eventually when we rebranded to Resultant, if you look at how the Resultant script is laid out, it's a hand-drawn thing. And so the phrase I would say is like, we are a deeply technical organization that does things in a deeply human way. Right. And I didn't have those words then, but I had the passion. Sure. Right. And yeah, I don't know. So I just survived on passion, and man, it was the best. Talk about a PhD. Holy cow. The only thing I've seen that was harder, personally seen, was when my wife went through residency. She's a pediatrician. That was 110 hours a week for 3 years straight, which is, there was one month she went to Ecuador in sort of a medical mission.
Yeah.
That was a normal amount. Everything else was 110 hours per degree. And you see that and you're like, well, that's silly.
Yeah, right.
It like sort of is. It's supposed to be 80 and never blah, blah, blah. But also, I see her approximately once a quarter. See something in a case, in a child, she's a pediatrician, see something in a child that she would have never caught had she not crammed a lifetime's worth of experience into the right years.
Yeah.
And she still gets heart palpitations 20 years later when she drives by Riley, right? But she learned his heart, right? And so that was like nowhere near as like actually valuable, but like it was 100 and some hours a week for, I think it was like 4 months.
Okay.
And that is a crash course MBA if you've ever heard it. Yeah. So it's cool, I think.
So a lifelong learner, it's a good thing you're a lifelong learner and you like that, and you kind of, it energizes you to learn something new. So you guys make the sale, you're running Resultants, right? And so then how long were you at Resultant before you decided to make the change to join the church?
Well, I didn't make the change to design the church. So I'll give you the full, the deep story, which was pretty personal. So we sold the business twice. It was great. We, bought 4 businesses along the way. We had the organic growth and all those things. Loved the culture, loved the people, all the sorts of things. And as it got close to 500 people, in hindsight, I was starting to get sort of misaligned with what I was and what the job was. So, the CEO works on behalf of the organization. CEO is a great job if you're a narcissist. If you're not, it's pretty terrible, right? Like you work for the organization. You dedicate like as much as your life as you possibly can to the organization being successful, right? Which ultimately means the customers being successful, So there's a lot of weight. There's the whole lonely at top thing, which, listening to CEOs whine is nobody's pastime, but there's a thing there, Sure. And so as we got close to 500, I started to feel this discontinuity, and I was sitting at the kitchen table one day. And you know this already. We've talked about, I love to teach. Yeah, I love to teach, right? And I'm trying to create a presentation to like teach something. And it was the 4th time I sat down to do it, and I just couldn't get it done. It's so weird, right? And so it's in the morning. My wife comes out of the kitchen. I'm sitting at the kitchen table trying to do this. I'm like, Jen, I don't understand why we can't get this thing done. It's so weird. So my wife, being in medicine, she's like, oh, previously enjoyable tasks no longer able to complete. Yeah. She says, have you thought about taking a depression screen? No, but thank you. Let me do it right now. And so I hop on, and it comes back severe to moderately depressed. I wouldn't have I don't know. I didn't come to that conclusion myself, but if I fill up the form and you're like, oh yeah. So I'm an engineer, so I didn't take one data point. I took it 3 more times over the next week at different times of day in different states of mind, just to make sure. Yeah. So that's what Derek. And then they basically all queued up the center. Right. So I'm like, okay, well, this is a thing. So I got to go figure this out. So I go to my doctor, and I walk in, and I'm like, hey, here's what's going on. Here's the test. He's like, okay, let me ask you about Shirley. What are you doing? He's like, how old are your kids? What does your wife do? You know, like you guys are in like the hardest time of life. You're midlife. Like I know midlife crisis is like a funny thing, but it's like thing.
It's really.
Blah, blah, blah. And then he says, remind me of your job again. I was like, oh, I'm CEO of a consulting firm. He's like, oh, you're a CEO. He's like, I'd never met a CEO that didn't get depression. Like, what? Like that was not in the brochure, dude.
All right. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And, you know, so that was like this moment, like, okay. And in, you know, like when you get something like that, of course, there's like all sorts of things that contribute to that and all those sorts of things. But from a work perspective, that sort of made me realize there's some sort of discontinuity I've had to make, right? Because I remember I'd love this thing. I love the work that's so all the things, right? There's some sort of discontinuity. And what I realized was like, I knew what the first 10 years looked like.
Yep.
Like I was there, I did it. I got to work with Charlie. Like I knew it, I did it. I felt like I was good at that 10 years, you know? I knew what 20 to 30 years looked like. Not that we're going to be 50, but like I'd worked at a very large organization. I'd never worked at that mid-market space. I never worked for anyone that worked in that mid-market space, any of that stuff. So I'm like, I don't even know what that looks like.
Got it.
Right. So I was like, okay, I gotta learn what that looks like. So I call one of my board members, Nikki. He's Irish. He's hilarious. I sort of lay all this out to Nikki. And he's like, you got to talk to my boy Higgy. Joe Higgins in Chicago, who to this day, like, I'm so grateful to that man. I'm sitting in a parking lot at Purdue as I talk to him for an hour, and he's just like, oh, yeah, like all the things. I understand, man. I've sat in that seat, like all the things. He'd done it for 20 years. Sure. Private equity backed CEO. And he helped me realize that, like, okay, this is sort of what the next 10 years is going to look like. And so over the course of like, I don't know, 3-4 months, we figured that out together. And he did a great job sort of laying that out.
It's awesome.
Which was great because it closed the knowledge gap, right? I get stressed when I don't understand something. Once I understand something, I feel like I can solve it. So I didn't understand it. Now I understand it. So it's good. Stress level comes down. Here's the problem. That wasn't me. Right? Yeah. So I knew what the first 10 years looked like. That was me.
That was totally you.
The next 10 years, I now understand it's not me.
Not you.
So call back that same board member and I'm like, hey man, we got like, here's my problem, right? Like, you know, I love this place, you know, blah, 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 but like, I don't think I'm the guy for the next 10 years. It's not like an emergency.
Yeah. I'm not going anywhere today.
Yeah. I'm looking for another job. I will not look for another job. Like none of that. In fact, I didn't even let myself think about what could be next because I know myself well enough to know I would go off running. Yeah. Or I heard that in my story already. So it's like, we're going to go find somebody else. If we find them, great. If we don't find them, I'll keep doing my best. Right. I made a commitment to you guys and to the organization and the customers. Well, we did. Took us a year, but we found somebody. So we brought him in. Took 6 months to transition. Also didn't allow myself to think about anything else after that. And then I show up on January 1st, 2024 for the first time in my life, maybe, with nothing to do. And the first week was great. Yeah. And I got a lot done at home. And the second week was torture. I can't do this. I'm going to be real bad at retirement. That's one thing I learned also. But like, yeah, so then I started what I called my year of the free range chicken. I taught at Butler. I consulted on my own. I did a bunch of different stuff and just sort of like used it to explore and learn and share all the things. Our church was 1837 when we were founded. So we're getting close to 200 years.
Okay. All right.
We were there 7 years before the town of Brownsburg.
Oh, wow.
We had left 31 years as a pastor who helped the church grow from almost dying, around 250 people, to thriving at 3,000.
Wow.
One location still, all that. He was there 31 years. He was our 35th pastor. Okay, yeah. And that's amazing. So here comes John, number 36. So yeah, and like I love the guy. Super intellectual. He's a bit of a nerd like me. Love his sermon. Just super deep. And he's saving up one day, and he sort of like, he didn't say it directly, but he sort of hints at the idea of like, when you're the guy at the top, it's lonely. He sort of hints at the idea. It's like, it's hard to have like real friends.
Yeah.
And you think about pastor, like you're always on, right? You have to like you can't do anything without, everybody's looking at you. Sorry. Yeah. So I'm looking at him, and this is the most stalker thing, I hope, that I've ever said in my life. I lean over to my wife and I'm like, Jen, we're going to be friends with him. He's basically saying, I don't, it's hard for me to get like really deep friends.
Yep.
we're just going to be their friends. Yeah, that's it. Right. And like, who says that? That's so weird. Like, I don't know.
I was seeking him out.
Yeah, right. So anyway, so we did. So we became friends. And, you know, just like you and I do, like we got to coffee. Well, what do? We talking about work. Yeah, right now, like stuff going on in our life. So we would talk about work. And at some point in that year of the free range chicken, 2024, he's like, well, what would you just come in and help us, like consult with us on this particular issue? So I came in, I think we called it like an operations assessment or something. It was like, hey, get under the hood and give me some answers, you know? So we did that. And then, it was some organizational changes that sort of needed to happen. And he was talking about his executive team. And, I sort of gave him the speech. I said, you know, John, my experience, like as you build executive teams, you're not picking individuals, you're building a team, right? Like the team, like it's absolutely critical. They have to work together to complement each other, and you're going to like annoy each other once in a while, but like, it's gotta be like well put together thing, right? I said, John, like my experience with CEOs, there were like lots of different flavors of CEOs, right? There was the sales flavor. That's a very common flavor of CEO, yeah, right? Because you can drive growth. Sure. There's a financial flavor. In the private equity world, there's a fair number of those guys. Yep. There's operational flavor. A lot of presidents that become CEOs are sort of operational in nature. I was like, I wasn't any of those. I could do all of those. Like I could do finance, I could do sales. But what I woke up every day wanting to do was the organizational flavor. Yep. It's like what I feel like I'm made to do is go find amazing human beings, give them the skills, the capabilities, the culture to achieve great things, point them at a mountaintop that matters, and unleash them on that mountaintop. That's what I do every morning when I wake up. That's what I'm thinking about. It's okay, right? I was like, so you have those other flavors. You don't have that flavor. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be you, but on the executive team, somebody's got to be doing that. Yeah, right. And like how I didn't know I was talking this, so I put to the job. Let me right. So, but he's like, oh, that's great. One day. That's great. How about you? Let's pick you. How about you? I'm like, oh, crap.
Yeah. Yeah. How about me? Wait, what did I just say? Oh yeah, that's right. I just talked about myself. That's right.
Yep. And so, yeah, it was like, you know, it was like a month. I was wise enough at that point not to just run down that path. Like that's like going to work at a church. Like it should be a heavy thing. Should be, right? If you really believe what you're getting into, it should be a heavy decision, right? Yeah. And so I thought about it for a month, and I had two people that I asked for advice. So one was a CEO in Chicago who I'd become friends with, actually on his board today, still good friends with him. And I knew he was a man of faith. And so, I called him and I said, hey, like, here's the opportunity. I was like, I've been praying about it. Like, I don't know. I feel like I want some sort of, it sounds just silly to say a sign, but like, give me something, you know, on the face, you know? And he said to me, he's like, let me ask you a question. 2 weeks ago, would you have done this? I said, well, no, because our buddy Nick Smirelli and I were like literally launching a new consulting firm in a different kind of zone, which is another funny story because he called me 2 weeks and he's like, hey, I want to work with you, but I don't want to do this. Like, okay, then we should not do this. So, but 2 weeks before we were doing that, right? And he's like, would you have done it 2 weeks from now? I said, well, no, because I've got this other thing sort of cooking. I think I'd go in that direction. He's like, okay, so in your entire life, there's this like 3 to 4 week window where you have the ability to consider and say yes to this. Like, yeah. It's like, well, in my experience, I've never heard God's audible voice. Like I know people that have. I've never heard it, but I often hear God's voice in God's timing. So that's something to consider.
Interesting. Okay, that's good. That's pretty good right there. That's pretty good. That's
okay. So that was meaningful. The other meaningful conversation was I was mentoring a young man in Texas, Preston, and he was 27, I think, at the time. I knew he was a strong man of faith today. So we get on our video call to do our mentoring session. I'm like, hey man, I'm flipping the script. You're mentoring me today, right? And I sort of lay all this out to him. I was like, what do you think? Like, you know me, you know this world, you've done some stuff in ministry. What do you think? And he said, well, you have basically infinite options. There's lots of stuff you could go do. He said, I was once told when presented with an infinite options, choose the option that turns you into the person you want to be.
Oh, great advice.
Dude, still sort of gives me chills. That just knocks it out of the park, right? That's awesome. So you put those two things together, and it's like, yeah, I gotta go. I gotta do this. I gotta go do this. So that fall, I think I told John yes in like June. I think I started half time in August as I wrapped some other things out.
Yeah.
And then it was January 25 when I went full time. It's been great.
That's awesome. It's been great. So running a year at the church, 3,000 people is what Pastor 35 had grown to. Pastor 36 comes in, right? You're now the chief of staff. Normally, I would ask about community involvement. What kind of nonprofits do you care about? Obviously, right? This is the world that you're in. So, like, what's going on at the church? What's new? What's going on with you guys?
Oh boy. So by the time when I had gotten there, we had grown to, it was about, call it 8,000 engaged on a given weekend. Now, some of those were digital.
Okay.
We had launched a digital service right before COVID, which was obviously a blessing, of course. It sort of sustains. We actually grew through COVID. Actually, was pretty rare for the church world. And we had leaned in really heavily on our student ministry. This might be an interesting. I know not everybody watching this is Christian, but it's sort of an interesting thing anyway. So we, when John first got there, so I think he's been there 8 years now. When he first got there, one of the things he says, we're going to lean into what we call next gen. So it's the next generation. So think students, so middle school, high school sort of stuff, right? And what had been happening in Christianity is, what had been happening in Christianity was 2/3 of young people between the ages of 18 and 29 that were raised in the church were leaving the church. So we say like 2/3. So if you were raised in the church, when you got to between 18 and 29, there was 2 out of 3 chance that you would leave the church. No kidding. Yeah. Like leave Christianity. Completely gone from the faith. Right. Now I grew up not a Christian. Like we would have said we were a Christian, but you didn't really do anything about it. It's sort of like American Christian. And then I was full-blown atheist in college, like aggressive. Yeah. Right. And there's a whole story there of how I got called back to faith. But yeah, I lived that. Yeah, right, sure, right. And there were a handful of things in there, but one of the things that really stuck out. So the American church, the Christian church was approximately 2,000 years old. Approximately, maybe like 2025. Yeah, something. Actually, that's not even true because worse. But in the American church, think back to like World War II, World War I, like that era, sort of early 19th century and before. Christianity was a lot of like follow the rules, right? Just sort of culturally, follow the rules. And for kids, that's not a terribly pleasant way to experience, of course, religion, right? But the culture, 90% of Americans were Christians, so you just sort of got carried along anyway, blah, 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 right? Well, in the 60s and 70s, and this is like directionally correct. I might screw up some of the exact dates, but like in the 60s and 70s, the church sort of corrected back. Like when the Pharisees, who were all about the rules, challenged Jesus to pick the best commandment, right? They were trying to trick him. Of course. What did he say? He's like, love God, love people. Yep. It's the whole thing, man. Love God and love people. Yep. Well, when it's all about rules, you miss a little bit of that. And so the church sort of corrected back to that love aspect, which is a thing, and so it got corrected back in the main kind of adult congregation. What ended up happening for kids is it sort of became mostly about love, right? That's not bad, of course. Right? We have this phrase, head, heart, and feet. So the heart part is like the love for God, the love for other people, feeling of, being connected to your creator, what that does for joy and all that sort of stuff. So it's not bad. That's good. Sure. Right. It's incomplete, but it's good. Yeah. Well, guess what happens when you go to college? You haven't had enough lifetime to have wisdom yet. Yep. You might have knowledge, but you go to college. Well, lots of stuff feels good. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Like why every decade or two do we always all try to decide if communism is good again? Yeah. Because it looks great on paper. Of course it does. Right? As soon as it meets a real human being, everybody starts murdering each other. Yeah. But lots of stuff feels good. Sure. And it takes wisdom and time to realize what's good and what's bad. Right. So what John sort of realized is like we are not equipping our young people with the intellectual rigor of the faith. Like, that's how I came back to God. I didn't come through the heart or the feet side. I came back intellectually. Like, it is more intellectually valid to believe in God than not. And I spent 2 years of my life going about as deep as you can go in that across every different religion, every different philosophy. Like, well, it's this stuff. Whatever. This isn't a religious podcast. We don't have to go down there.
No, but it goes back to who you are, though, right? You talk even with depression. You went through and did the test 3 different times, 4 different times during the week, different time of day, different thing, just to see if you get to the same result. You tested it.
Yep.
So you went through a couple of years.
Yeah, back to my early 20s.
No kidding.
I'll just tell the story. Yeah. So I had C.S. Lewis says there's 2 steps of faith. So the same guy that wrote, a lot of the popular children's stories, Language and Word and all that, was a deep philosophical thinker about Christianity. He also was not a Christian when he became a Christian. He says there's 2 steps of faith. So step 1 is not I believe. Step 1 is maybe, right? So I would say in my 18 to 22 range, as a rabid atheist,
On the surface, it's not any different than Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Like, this is silly.
Like, why would you possibly believe in this stuff, right? And that's sort of where I was. And to use a biblical term, my heart was hardened. Sorry, what they said. But basically, it's like, I'm not even open to considering it. Cool. That's what that means. Yeah, right. Well, my now wife, I just started dating her. She was a Christian. She invited me to church. And she was real pretty, so I went.
We share the same story there.
I got to church too. I chased a girl.
Yeah, I got there too.
Yeah. And the dude, like, it's some random church in Terre Haute. I couldn't even probably find it on a map anymore, but I still remember to this day sitting in that worship center. There's probably, 300-ish people in there. And there's this guy standing up on stage, and he's double PhD, ancient Hebrew, ancient Greek. And it's a very classic sermon, I now know, but he gives a sermon on how in English we have one word for love. It's called love. But in Greek, there are many words for love. So eros, agape, this hill, right? Sure. And so he's like, like this happens. Like, there is an original text that is unchanged, but we translate that text into other languages. And sometimes you just lose a little bit of subtlety. Yeah. So why was he a double PhD? Because he wanted to go back to the original things, right? So love was one of those things. So he breaks all that down. Okay. So that was fascinating. I still love that sermon.
Awesome.
But that was not, the sermon itself was not the point. The point for me was this dude on stage is brilliant. And he believes this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I know that a lot of the most brilliant people throughout history have believed. Yeah, but at the time it didn't.
Sure.
And so I'm like,
There's right in there.
There's something, right? So that was just my first step of faith, was just like, maybe.
No kidding.
And then, I'm a curious guy. I'm like, all right, well, there's a gap in my knowledge. Like, let's go figure it out. And this was about the time I was going to Stanford. So I went to church at Stanford. My buddy Dave Fisher, actually, we went together. And I knew what that 4 years without God, I wouldn't have said without God. I knew what my 4 years looked like. And I did good things. I think was a generally good person. I also did some really stupid stuff. And I had a hole inside of me.
Sure.
About what it was to be a human being. And I don't know. I didn't even know how to describe it, right? Anyway. So I started going to church out there, but I'm like, well, to me, I'm like, well, if you just go to church, that could just be indoctrination. That's why you believe it, right? If I'm like, I got to read all the things. So I read every book I could find from Carl Sagan. He's an atheist. Every book I could read by Richard Dawkins. But few other atheists. I read the Quran. I read a bunch about Hindu. I read a bunch about Buddhism. And by the way, I'm in Silicon Valley, which is sort of the liberal center of the U.S. at the moment, or at least one of the liberal centers of the U.S. And so I'm reading, and I'm also experiencing it. And I sort of noticed a signal in the data. So the signal, and this took 2 years, by the way. This wasn't like a weekend. This took 2 years. The signal I noticed was whenever I fully understood and did things aligned with the Bible, it seemed to go pretty well. Whenever I aligned against the Bible, it seemed to go pretty bad. Okay. It is like Mark Caswell's first moment of wisdom.
There you go.
Right. And so for me, I noticed that. And now I'm like, and you know what? I also noticed that in other people, other people around me, when they either accidentally, it doesn't even have to be on purpose necessarily. When they accidentally or on purpose sort of do what the Bible says, it tends to, like generosity, those tend to be generous. Like that tends to go pretty well. Yeah. When they don't, tends not to go pretty well. Sure, right? So there's that. And then in all these different texts I'm reading from across the world, the Bible is the only one that has literary credibility back to the source.
Yep.
All the rest of them have been changed significantly. So there's sort of like a scientific basis for that. But the other thing I noticed is like Buddhism. Buddhism's got some really cool stuff, like transcendental meditation, for example. Like the Buddhism, Hindu, like there's different religions that sort of circle around that same concept. That is very similar to prayer.
Yep.
It includes aspects of awe. It includes aspects of getting outside yourself. I'm sure, like in the Bible, they would say, "Be still and know that I am God." Right? Like wherever a different religion or a different civilization or philosophy, either on purpose or accidentally, got something right according to Christianity, it went well, right? Where they didn't, it did. Yeah, right. And then you just look at the history of humanity, and you're like, well, why is the Western world like? I know we like to like say we're terrible people,
right?
But nothing in the history of man has lifted more people globally out of poverty than the things we've done in the Western world. And we also have lots of bad stuff, but nothing. Why? Well, it all traces back to Christianity. Why do universities exist? Why does healthcare exist? Why has slavery largely been eradicated, at least in the Western world? Why, like all on and on and on. Like you trace it all back, it's all Christian, not all. There are other people that are not Christian, but it is majority Christians for Christians reasons.
Yeah.
So like, look at all this over 2 years. I'm like, well, I think I'm just a statistical Christian. Like just like all my data points say this is right. It must be. Yeah. So even if there's like a little bit of me, which I now know theologically is actually a thing, even if there's a little bit of me that's like, I'm not quite, I'm just like, I think it's just true.
Yep.
I think it's true. If you get struck by lightning 55 times,
yep,
you might start to think you're a lightning rod. Yep. That's right. Even if you might, in this point, it's just like true, right? And so, and now I've lived another, how old am I? 25 years. I have much more depth and much like it all makes a whole lot of sense. But at the moment, I was like, I just like the nerdiest way you could possibly become a Christian. I think I'm just a statistical Christian.
But it goes back. It seems like a Mark Caswell way to become a Christian. But what I heard was the same thing as mine. There was this pretty girl. He just goes at a church. And so, yeah, it's like, see, I'm not an engineer. I'm like, this girl's pretty. She's going to church. I'll meet her. Yeah, okay, I'll start doing this stuff. And then of course, mine's a little bit shorter. I'm in Jamaica. I think I'm 18 years old. First time I've ever been on an airplane. I go to Jamaica. I'm on a work trip. We're down there. I'm leading the work crew because I knew how to build stuff and all these things. And the pastor's name was Darwin Dutton. He was a younger pastor. Great guy. Took me under his wing. Really good guy. We're down there. We're digging this trench. And we're building the church, and the trench was going to be for a footing. And we get this thing, dug. It's hand dug. So when I said, you're building a church. I'm building church, not a Christian, going to church because there's a pretty girl. I ended up going on this trip. Right.
So, I see. Yes, I'm on this trip because I'm going to church, but I'm not a Christian. I'm dating Kelly. I like her, but I'm curious, right? So I'm down there. Darwin and I are digging. We dig this trench. The guy comes over and goes, hey, really good job. It's in the wrong spot. I'm like, wait a second. We've hand dug this thing. It's been about half a day. All right, no big deal. We fill it in. We move the thing over like 3 feet. Dig a new trench. Guy comes back and goes, hey, sorry, the original spot was really where we wanted that footer. You need to fill this one in and go back to the original one. I am American angry. I am ready to go, because you would never do this building in the United States. You'd lay the line, you get up, down, all that kind of stuff. I am just angry. Darwin is over there sitting on a rock, smiling, just like sitting there. What are you doing? He goes, I'm soon getting ready to fill in the dirt and dig the other hole. I go, aren't you mad? No, not really. I said, Darwin, we're here to build a church. We're here to put the stuff in the ground to build a church, to put in the wall. He says, Jesus, build the building. Build a church. Oh, that is so good. And I say, Darwin, I don't understand any of that, but I certainly don't want to be mad. And an 18-year-old kid, and he goes, hey, I tell you what. He goes, it's 83 degrees down here. It's sunshine. It's beautiful. We're building the church. Look at the kids playing over there. He goes, you can be back home. It's December, right? You can be back home in Indianapolis or Fort Wayne. It's probably, 20 degrees. It's cold.
We're on an island in the Caribbean. This is great. Darwin, I think you're a bit crazy. Right? But I'm not quite sure what that
Just so crazy, but there's some little thing about this nonsensical Christian dude in front of you. And so as I say, Darwin, I said, I don't know what that means, but I want to feel that way too. Yeah, I'll say a prayer. If you believe this kind of stuff, you'd follow along with me. I said, okay, so we prayed right there in the dirt, and I became Christian. Right there. And that was, dude, Kelly brought me to church. I go dig a ditch. Next thing you know, I'm a Christian. And completely changed my life. I don't know what I would have done. I don't know what if I would have met my wife back in high school. It's kind of a long story, but what a great thing. And Darwin Dutton, it's saying we're not building a building, we're building the church. Yep, changed my life. Amazing. We could talk church. That is so cool. So, but the church now, right? So you guys are growing. I drive by a church on the way to work all the time. So you guys are growing across the city. Anything cool, exciting happening in the way of growing the church? So, I totally got distracted in my story. You even sound excited. So, okay. So that whole kids are going away from the church. Yes. Because of the heart. They're only focused on the heart. Lots of, you guys, you can focus on next gen. Yeah. Lots of stuff we just get. Well, what we sort of realized was, no one my story, I would like to think there was a fair amount of intellectual rigor in my story. Right? Well, God doesn't have to be afraid of science. God is truth. They're on the same team, right? They might not always agree at a given moment, but science is the pursuit of truth. And at the end of that is God, right? So there you go. So this intellectual rigor, why aren't we giving this to our kids? So we created this thing called worldview. The church word is called apologetics, but it's just intellectual rigor around the faith. Yep. Right. We hired a PhD in apologetics. We start teaching my kids, and it took a little bit. But my kids are a great example. The depth of true deep knowledge they have around the intellectual aspect of faith, not just the emotional aspect of faith. They're both important. Sure. Is incredible, right? Well, that, then when you go to university, you can actually defend your ideas. Not to mean you don't hear something that's interesting and explore things and all that. It's not put a wall up and don't even, no. I should have some intellectual rigor behind this thing. Yep. So that was great. Then John had been writing books, and I've already said some of the things in his books, and that's why I won't repeat them. But one of the things he sort of discovered was, so remember, investigator journalist. Yep, of course, his background. Nerd like me. Yep, digging at the stuff. And I thought I was visionary until I met John. He's this dude thinks in millennia. Okay. He sort of recognized that there's these different moments in American history that we celebrate as significant social movements forward. So first off, just the formation of our country. Yep. We sort of forgot how special that was. That was weird in sort of the span of world history. Yep. Right. Emancipation of slaves, abolition. The absolutely horrible thing that had unfortunately been a global norm, and it was the Western world that finally, set their head on our high knee and started to turn that around. Yep. Women's rights movements, minority rights, all these different moments throughout history that we celebrate. Well, if you go look at them and you dig in, a very large fraction of the people that were fighting for those things and dying for those things were Christians for Christian reasons. And a lot of those people, if you kind of trace back, when did they become a Christian or get on fire for it? It was during what we call a Great Awakening. So that, if you ever heard the term revival, the easiest way to think of revival is whole bunches of people coming out to God and Christianity. So maybe you're already Christian and you're deepening, or maybe you're coming to it for the first time, like you and I just talked about. There's 4 Great Awakenings in U.S. history, and they're directly tied to the movement forward our country has made. Right. Well, I don't talk to anybody of any political persuasion that thinks we're getting it real right at the moment, in our country. Right. And so he's sort of looking at all of that. He's guys, the answer is in history. The only answer, look across all the world, when human beings invent systems on their own, they tend to go real bad. Yep. Right. But our country's we have examples of this as well. So he's basically the way to solve the problems is to come back to God through the 5th grade awakening. And he sort of detected that it actually like happens in a certain way. Okay. Right. Like God owns revival. No person, no church, no money, no owns revival, but like there's a way it sort of happens. And interestingly, I love this actually. Well, it goes all the way back to that thing we talked about, right? Like revival doesn't happen by talking about revival. Revival happens by you deciding to get yourself right with God.
That's right.
Right? Like I'm gonna get back in the game.
Yep.
Right? I've been out here doing some things I shouldn't do. I've kind of lost my love for God. Whatever it is, I'm like, I want to be back in relationship with God. He doesn't expect me to be perfect, but he wants to be in a relationship. So I'm gonna get back, right? And then you do that, and you're like, okay, we can go do some stuff together. There's this thing called repentance for relationship. Then pretty soon you like get there, right? Then you start to have a broken heart for the lost, because like much like I am sure. What was his name? The pastor?
Darwin.
So Darwin's looking at you as a freaking out 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And he's like, I got what you need.
Yeah, that's right.
I got what you need. And he saw you. Yeah. Right? So now you start to see people. You fix you, then you get your family, then you sort of goes out from there. So we sort of like figured that out, right? So you put those two things together, and the people in our movement that have experienced those things and are experiencing those things, myself included, I've never known joy like in my life. Yeah, like this. It's like I feel like I'm finally sort of getting it right.
It's awesome.
You know, even after being a Christian for 20 years. And so the exciting thing is we are launching a new organization nationally called the Revival Project.
Okay.
This is you're the first person outside the church I've told this.
Awesome.
The Revival Project. And our goal, so we have this stuff that we've created for our church. So we want to give it away.
Yep.
There's no money. They're like, we want to give it away, but we want to give it away in the right way.
Okay.
Because like we've been consultants, right?
Yep.
Like you can't just like throw somebody a report and it goes back to, yeah, or does it work? Right? It doesn't work. So we want to like come alongside them. We want to package this up in such a way. We want to customize it, like all the things that we have, all these tools. We have like, and it's a startup.
Yep.
Currently, John, we're co-founders. Yeah, here. John's co-founder and chief visionary. I am my pet peeve, which is co-founder and CEO. It's my pet bond CEO. That's it. Like it's hilarious. What I like I always say, it's good. But we're gonna go give this stuff away. So we're building an organization. We've got our first 2 people hired, and you can tell, like, Jason, I think this is what I was called to do, which is a hard thing for me to say out loud because it comes with it's a little terrifying to say that out.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Like I remember when like Resultant was like going great, but I loved Result. I loved it, and it was good. But we were sort of at this peak moment. We're winning awards and everything, and somebody said something to me that basically it was some version of like, "Isn't it great to have arrived?" Which giant eye roll from the farm kid. But my instantaneous response was like, "Oh yeah, it's good, but I don't know if this is what I was called to do." Or no, I said no, but this isn't what I was called to do, Indiana. And as soon as I said, I'm like, where did that come from? I'm like, yeah, that's. I had no inkling at that point that I was like, hey, so do something else. No, wow. And so then I go to work at the church, and like I've had this 2 years of experience with them, and it's been amazing. And like we've got 1,000 more people this year. We tripled our student ministry. Like I've literally seen miracles, not figuratively, not wave my hand around. Like I have seen people's lives saved. I've seen marriages saved. I've seen people saved from addiction. Like health is like, it's crazy. The sort of stuff that back in my early 20s, I've been like, so you're certifiably insane. I'm running at, but I see all that, right? And still, it was like, I'm not like, this is amazing. I'm not sure it's closer, but I'm not sure it's quite it. I think maybe this is it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we want to go get 5,000 churches on our platform by 2032.
Okay.
Like Brennan the play, whatever that means, we're still new, right? We want 25 million Americans to have heard the thesis, like the ideas around this. Sure. So that, like one of the beauties of Christianity is like everybody gets to pick, right? But even if you pick not, which sort of breaks my heart, even if you pick not, you at least knowing that the reason our country is amazing is because of it.
Yeah.
Like one example that I've tons of friends who are atheists, right? One of the things I'll say to them is, so do you believe, I'll just ask you, do you believe that human beings have intrinsic value or relative value?
Ooh,
So, in the US, our default is intrinsic. Yeah, like regular. Yeah, like that's part of like the beauty of some of the social justice movements is it sort of comes out of that idea of like all human beings have value, right? So most of the world isn't like that today. And for harder human history, almost none of the world was. Yeah. The Jews first introduced that idea really like 6,000 years ago almost. And then in Christianity, it's sort of like doubled down on the idea. But like the idea that like most of the world is like, it depends what your title is. It depends how much money you make. It depends on your gender. It depends on your accomplishments. Oh, like that's your value. You have habit
or advised things, not just you being you. Like, so, I mean, all of these things mean really nothing. It's you being you. You make what's special. Just right.
As a human being, you have intrinsic value.
That's right. Absolutely.
Almost everyone in the United States believes that. It's a distinctly Christian value, right? If you go back and read the Constitution, a foundational assumption they have and they write it, the only place they come close to writing it is all men are created equal.
Yeah.
An inherent assumption that underlies it is that assumption. And I doubt they would have even known to write out. Wow, yeah, sure. So that's one, like human beings have intrinsic value. Another is the truth exists, and both the truth and the pursuit of truth have intrinsic value. Another one is justice and the pursuit of justice have intrinsic value. In fact, the pursuit of justice is so important that it is good to pursue it, even if it costs me more to get it than I gain by getting it.
Oh, why?
That's a distinct. Yeah, sure. Yeah, Western, what's that? Sure. All of those ideas that our entire civilization is built on.
Yeah.
All of those ideas are Christian.
Yeah.
You don't see them other places. And when Western worlds let go of Christianity, they tend to let go of those ideas.
Wow.
Right?
Yep.
So think Communist Soviet Union. Yeah, think Nazi Germany, of course. They let go of some of those ideas. So as soon as you think somebody has relative value, it's perfectly acceptable, even rational, to kill them.
Yep. Yeah, why not, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing there of value. Therefore, why don't we just want to eliminate, right? Move on to the.
Yeah, they don't have value. You're not doing anything wrong if it doesn't have value.
Yeah. You don't pour money into an investment that's not returning any money to you. You pour money over here. So
yes,
let's stop this over there.
Yeah. So you like in my early Christian, I used to say like even if you're not a Christian, you should want everyone to be a Christian for like license, like that. And of course, the Christian church gets it wrong. There are awful stories. One of the things that breaks my heart the most is when people have stories that they were in the church and then they get driven out by somebody that are bad guys. Just because they're awful. But at the big picture, like that's sort of the thing. So I don't know. We're gonna go do that. It's awesome. And I hope it works.
So still gonna be chief of staff at the church.
Yep.
And then running us on the side, going out talking to churches. I'm assuming maybe in opportunities to speak at other churches, which puts you into the situation of teaching, which brings everything kind of back to so when you think about kind of where you're going and where you are is where you are called to be, you're going to end up probably being a teacher of individuals across the United States running through this methodology, which is kind of where you started for at the PNE.
Maybe.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Man, I gotta, we could go for hours and days.
I know I was going to give you a sermon,
there's so many things in there that people are going to pull out of this. There's business, there's study, there's Christianity, there's growth in business, there's following different things. Great story. And so, before we close out, right? So just a couple of quick things. So let's talk maybe a little bit of fun. So 3 kids, wife. If you guys are having fun, going on a vacation, where is it you guys are going to? What's fun to go on a vacation, you guys?
Oh boy. This is the most bougie thing about me. If you're like, I swear it's practical. I swear. So my wife and I so I get to travel internationally a lot in my career. We talked about that. I actually got my MBA in Spain. When my wife and I retire, rather than go to like Arizona or Florida, we want to go to Portugal.
Yeah.
It's actually cheaper than Indiana. It's gorgeous. The people, it's like the Midwest of Europe. People are wonderful, like all these different things. So we are residents of Portugal, hoping to someday become dual citizens.
Yeah.
Which is so weird for a farm kid from Michigan to nowhere, right? But that's where we love to go. So we love to go explore Portugal. It's cheap once you get there, but the plane tickets aren't great. So the cheap dad in me isn't like thrilled as here. You know, that part. But yeah, we love that. And, you know, I don't know. We travel a ton for sports. Like all 3 kids are travel sports.
Yeah.
Once you come to the terms with the fact that you don't have a life because you're a travel sport family, that's your life.
Yeah.
Then it becomes fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm
Not sure. All right. Around Indianapolis, if you guys are going to dinner, favorite dinner spot?
Ooh. I like all the food. I love, for like American high quality, I love Trader's Point Creamery.
Good call. Yeah.
I really love Rathskeller. I have German, ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch.
There you go.
I have German ancestry, so does my wife. We've learned German over the years. Love that food, all that stuff. Delicia.
Yeah.
In Midtown is a pretty great. That's probably Met West. Miltooth,
Miltooth, good one. That's a good one. I've heard that one in a while. That's a good one.
Bluebeard.
Okay. Blueberry be a new one for me.
Oh, it's good.
It's right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You gotta like, I gotta tamp down my engineering going there because I'm not nearly cool enough to be over there. It's like, they never made me show my passport.
Yeah, right.
They should.
Yeah.
But yeah.
My gosh, I love it. Mark Caswell, thank you. Appreciate you sharing your story. Great episode. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah. It's great and fun.